He hides his face in his hand as the bitter truth of betrayal crushes him. His wife lounges in a sleek suit, the memory of his cherished pride now tainted by infidelity. He slumps alone on the couch, the quiet room swallowing his disbelief that she chose a junior colleague over him. She clutches the bedsheet and screams her excuse, turning her guilt into a dagger aimed at him. He covers his mouth, trembling with contempt at how absurd everything has become. His tired eyes stare blankly as he forces himself to stop caring whether his wife ran off with her lover. His back sinks into the sofa as he mutters about food, trying to drown hunger and heartbreak in one decision. He steps out of his apartment, straightening his suit while wondering what kind of extravagant meal might numb the pain. A lone schoolgirl hugs her knees on the corridor floor, looking fragile and abandoned. Tears shimmer in the girl's eyes as she softly calls out to the teacher, clinging to him as a lifeline. He freezes in the doorway, thrown off balance by the sight of a high school girl sitting at his home. She gazes up at him with wet, adoring eyes, insisting it is really her teacher while he stands stunned. He jerks around in alarm as a shout accuses him of making someone's older sister cry. Another girl storms forward with hands on hips, daring him to answer for the tears he caused. Her flustered glare and exposed chest push in close, leaving him rattled by yet another bold gal. His eyes narrow in confusion as he tries to process that the fiery blonde is supposedly the other girl's older sister. The blonde cuddles the dark-haired girl and scolds him playfully, weaponizing affection to shame the adult. The younger sister buries her face against the blonde, her forced smile trembling as she tries to stop her own tears. He stares at them, completely at a loss, as their chaotic energy crashes against his worn-out patience. The two girls beam side by side, their contrasting looks making his unease spike as he wonders what they want. He frowns slightly, baffled why these kids stand at his doorstep and insist on calling him sensei. The blonde squeezes her sister and suddenly remembers their real purpose, shifting the mood with mischievous resolve. She leans into his space with a coy smile, boldly asking to stay the night as if daring him to refuse. Her half-lidded eyes and blush promise a dangerous trade, turning a simple request into seduction. The pair press close with innocent smiles, casually suggesting indecent favors as payment and tightening the trap. The blonde pouts and repeats the offer of dirty fun, acting offended that he did not take the bait. Both girls peek at him with a teasing wink, scolding him for underestimating them while treating intimacy like a game. He glares down at them, declaring his refusal as their flustered protests clash with his desperate need to draw a line. A hand shoots out and grabs his wrist, physically stopping his retreat before he can escape the situation. The dark-haired girl looks up with a blush and pleading eyes, confessing they have nowhere else to go. The blonde plants her hands on her hips and calls him Okurin, testing whether the forgotten nickname will shake him. The dark-haired twin peers up anxiously, hurt that their beloved teacher might not even remember them. An old memory surfaces as he pictures two much younger girls, realizing how long it has been since that time. His eye widens in sudden recognition, the past slamming into the present with unsettling force. The twins light up with relief as they confirm he was their cram school teacher from years ago. He rubs his neck awkwardly, finally recalling that the troublesome pair of twins once filled his classroom. The blonde proudly introduces herself with a bashful smile, showing off how much the once small student has grown. The dark-haired sister follows shyly, her posture tense yet hopeful as he speaks her name. Overcome with emotion, she throws herself into his chest, clinging to the teacher she has chased across the years. Her eyes shine with tears of joy as she smiles up at him, grateful that he finally remembered who they are. He forces a crooked smile as he admits Nanako has grown, while her sudden embrace presses old boundaries against his chest. The blonde smothers her sister from behind, brazenly flaunting her body while the trapped girl squirms in mortified outrage. She lifts her own chest with shameless pride, turning a simple introduction into a sultry boast that makes the air heavy. Her narrowed eyes and tight smile warn him to remember exactly how provocative her body now is whenever he looks. She laughs and squeezes herself as she claims he never changed, while he averts his eyes, cornered by her bold nostalgia. His gaze softens with unease as he silently admits their curves have matured even while their reckless hearts stayed the same. The two girls sit primly on his sofa, knees close and drinks untouched, as his unfinished thought about them hangs in the air. He leans forward with a wary frown, demanding to know how they tracked him to this private refuge. The sisters stand side by side, one smug and one apologetic, masking a stalker's confession behind playful bravado. Sweat beads on his face as he recalls the old apartment complex, struggling to grasp how they bridged years to find him again. In the memory, the younger twins gleefully tail him through the streets, turning their teacher into prey in a childish game. He stares ahead in shock, quietly labeling their past obsession a crime he never even noticed. Nanako bows her head with a guilty tremor, admitting she always knew that following him was wrong. Her sister tackles her with teasing outrage, exposing her chest again as they bicker over who was the most obsessed with him. He remembers scolding their smaller selves at the cram school podium, realizing nothing about their chaotic devotion has really changed. Akari's voice softens as she notices the shimmer in his eyes, worried that their reunion has reopened some deeper wound. He forces a wobbly smile through the tears, claiming it is only nostalgia while his broken heart leaks into the words. The twins watch him in tense silence, calling his name as if afraid his fragile composure might shatter any second. He bows his head and starts to apologize for the awkward mess of their reunion just as they look up like scolded children. He offers a glass of cola with exaggerated cheer, trying to drown his guilt in hospitality as their tiny hands accept it. Nanako jolts in surprise, blush blazing, as his extended drink and sudden closeness set her whole body off balance. The soda splashes across the sofa, panic flaring while he hovers anxiously and both sisters insist they are fine. She glances down at the damp patch on her skirt, the clingy fabric turning a minor spill into a mortifying spotlight. Akari chirps that it is nothing, but her sideways look at her sister hints there is a more devious angle forming. Akari leans in with a sly smile, teasing her flushed sister for reacting like a pure maiden just from brushing his hand. Nanako stammers out an apology, cheeks burning as if the accidental touch had exposed every feeling she tried to hide. His hand lands gently on her head in automatic comfort, and her eyes widen as nostalgic warmth collides with forbidden thrill. He flings his arms up in panic, babbling that it was just an old teacher habit while fearing he has crossed a line. He leans toward her in frantic apology, but she grips the sofa and insists that his touch was not unpleasant at all. Her lashes lower in relief as she admits the pat soothed her, while Akari watches with a knowing, almost jealous smile. Akari casually asks to borrow his shower, forcing him to guide her toward the bathroom like a nervous guardian on thin ice. She thanks him with a rosy grin and tugs her sister along, turning a simple bath into another flirtatious provocation. Wrapped only in a towel, Akari saunters out and jokes about bathing together, daring him to react as his restraint tightens. She turns away with a pout when he shuts her down, calling him boring even as he hurriedly promises clean clothes and escape. He lingers alone in the hallway, hands in his pockets, weighed down by the dangerous intimacy now seeping into his quiet home. Nanako adjusts her glasses with trembling fingers, cheeks aflame, as she replays the head pat that made her feel strangely safe. He exhales and murmurs that her relief must come from the simple fact they are together again, half comforted and half afraid. Slumped on the sofa, he groans about how wildly the day has escalated, his exhausted body sinking deeper into the cushions. A mental snapshot of his wife clinging to the smug junior colleague flashes up, twisting the knife of his earlier humiliation. That image bleeds into the sight of the blushing schoolgirl in his hallway, making her unexpected visit feel even more surreal and dangerous. He stares down at the flustered girl pinned under his gaze, reeling as desire clashes with the reminder that she used to sit in his classroom. He collapses bonelessly across the bed, overwhelmed as the day's whirlwind feels less like real life and more like someone else's melodrama. Eyes half-lidded, he weighs the social minefield of harboring them against the quiet comfort of not sending them away. In his mind, he stands between the twins, their warmth pressed to his sides as loneliness from betrayal gnaws a deeper hole in his chest. Akari's urgent cry yanks him from his thoughts, and he stiffens, bracing for yet another crisis. The twins burst in wearing only towels and anxious smiles, thrusting their bodies and a broken washing machine problem straight into his self-control. His face erupts in panic as he sputters at them, terror and embarrassment crashing over him in equal waves. The girls cling together smugly, gloating over how thoroughly they rattled him even while insisting the crisis is real. He hurls clothes over their heads with desperate authority, forcing modesty back into a situation slipping out of his hands. Akari thanks him while pouting that he missed his cue to ogle, twisting his courtesy into proof that he is failing some rom-com script. Nanako shyly arches forward, letting the fabric hug her chest as every curve becomes a silent challenge to the man trying not to look. They dismiss his denial with a tiny sheesh, their unimpressed stares making his forced moral high ground wobble. He gapes at the dead washing machine, realizing the lewd excuse has become a stubbornly inconvenient fact. Akari tugs at her borrowed sweater with a sly smirk, hinting that without clean clothes, she is conveniently trapped here. He frowns with heavy dread, voicing the danger of letting underage girls stay alone in a grown man's home. Akari's eyes soften and brim, her trembling plea painting him as a monster if he dares push them back out into the night. The sisters glance over with uneasy blushes, their vulnerable beauty making him imagine the worst strangers might do if he abandons them. The late hour ticks accusingly from the wall clock, reminding him that every option is closing in fast. Akari suddenly tilts her head and bluntly questions his experience, stabbing straight into his wounded pride. Nanako flails and scolds her sister while blurting that any normal man would be aroused by now, exposing how boldly they have been testing him. Nanako bows with a flushed apology, yet her wavering voice reveals she still wonders why their teacher remains so maddeningly untouched. Akari studies his conflicted silence, sensing that her teasing might have struck closer to the truth than either of them expected. Their chibi forms kneel like abandoned puppies beside a note begging protection, turning his hesitation into a cruel act in their wide, watery eyes. He closes his eyes with a resigned sigh, feeling morality, fear, and loneliness all push him toward the same reluctant decision. Nanako stiffens and begins to offer a ridiculous laundromat sleepover plan, only for Akari to panic as the farce undercuts their plea. He finally mutters his consent, shoulders tense as he officially invites trouble to stay under his roof. The twins light up with disbelieving joy, their mirrored smiles making his concession feel both right and terrifying. They collapse into each other's arms, celebrating their victory while Nanako's relieved whisper hints how desperate they truly were. He rubs his neck with a dazed look, admitting to himself that the promise slipped out before his brain could stop his mouth. Akari pumps a fist and volunteers to cook, her playful bravado masking a deeper desire to claim space in his life. Nanako drags her back with a mortified shout, joking that her sister's only real asset is her body and weaponizing it to fluster him again. He exhales a soft "geez" with a faint smile, the edge of despair easing as their foolishness nudges his heart awake. The twins laugh and cling to each other, their easy intimacy filling the room with a warmth he has not felt since before the betrayal. Outside his apartment, the bland railings frame a single lit door as he warns them this risky arrangement lasts only for tonight, even while knowing his heart is already hooked. Later at work, he sits by the window as a coworker's teasing question cuts through his detached silence and branded reputation. The junior colleague leans on his cubicle with a smirk, enjoying how the window seat editor title paints him as dead weight. Gesturing dramatically, the younger man mocks his vague presence and invisible workload, turning the office into a quiet stage for public shaming. He answers flatly that he is staying late again, while his coworker marvels at the pointless overtime like it is some tragic hobby. The junior snaps finger guns and congratulates him on wasting his night, oblivious to the simmering irritation behind the older man's eyes. He stares at the glowing monitor and insists his work matters, clinging to the manuscript on screen as proof he is not as useless as everyone thinks. His junior grins at his phone, giddy as he brags in his head about scoring a date with a ridiculously hot girlfriend. His smug thoughts float on, eager to flaunt a picture of this mise-en-scène like a trophy. He bolts upright in bed, heart pounding as he realizes the twins in his futon were only a dream, yet still wonders if he really let them sleep there. He slumps in the doorway in his suit, scratching his head as the weight of reality settles back on his shoulders. Akari greets him at the stove with a flirty smile, her casual morning, turning his cramped kitchen into unfamiliar domesticity. He stares at her apron-clad curves and tentatively asks about her missing uniform, uneasy that last night's chaos has bled into this homely scene. Nanako boots the washing machine with surprising aggression, proudly claiming victory while he accepts her absurd solution with a nervous nod. He blinks in startled focus as Nanako urges him to look, anxiety spiking at what Akari might have done now. A simple slice of toast and cup of coffee appear with a cutesy flourish, their modesty clashing with the dramatic build-up. Nanako sulks over the empty fridge and scolds Akari, while he listens awkwardly, realizing his own neglect forced her out shopping at dawn. Akari's face tightens as she connects his bare cupboards to the wife who abandoned both her vows and even basic care. Hand on her hip, she fumes that his cheating wife could not even be bothered to cook, contempt hardening her playful aura. Her eyes narrow with cold judgment as she brands the absent woman a failure at life itself, not just as a spouse. Nanako freezes in chibi panic when he quietly asks how she even knows about the infidelity, guilt prickling through her bangs. Akari forces a wobbly grin and vague excuse, betraying that she has been watching his pain more closely than she admits. In chibi form, she shoves him toward the table, her forced cheer and insistent hands trying to stuff food between him and his misery. Akari sets his iced, milk-heavy coffee down with a bright smile, while he blinks in surprise that she remembered every picky detail. She reminds him she had nagged this preference into him long ago, her soft gaze turning the cold drink into a shared history. He lowers his eyes while she urges him to forget that stupid woman, the blunt dismissal clashing with the heaviness dragging at his chest. Akari leans closer with a worried, gentle look, silently asking if her hard words actually helped or just reopened the wound. He straightens his tie with a small, strained smile, agreeing that he did nothing wrong and trying to believe it. She juts out her chest with fierce conviction, insisting all blame rests on his wife and that he should just walk away. Then she blushes and half jokes about being a bargain set with her sister, turning comfort into a provocative offer that makes the air thicken. Stretching, she grumbles about Nanako oversleeping and charges off to wake her, still filling his cramped home with loud, reckless energy. He stops her with a quiet call, explaining he has to head to work, and her confused blink reminds him how abnormal his routine is. The twins stare in chibi disbelief when he mentions Saturday work, their black company chant making his job sound like a curse. Akari pouts that a salaryman with no weekends is just broken, bluntly telling him to ditch such a place already. He hesitates, then admits she has a point, only to look up in confusion when she suddenly bows toward him. Before he can react, she rises on her toes and steals a flustered kiss to his cheek, shocking him into wide-eyed silence. Flushed and shyly triumphant, she calls it a lucky charm, turning his stunned face into proof that her boldness hit home. With cheeks still burning, she wishes him a good day, her tiny heart-marked farewell clinging to him like perfume. He announces his departure as Nanako waves both arms and hollers her goodbye, their carefree send-off masking how hooked he already is. Nanako pads up behind him as he sits on the floor, her sleepy presence and quiet sensei softening the morning aftershock. Half-lidded and rumpled, she rubs her eyes and confirms she has just woken, vulnerable in oversized clothes that make her look even more fragile. She smiles drowsily and slurs a good morning to her teacher, the intimate familiarity in her tone nudging at forbidden warmth. He answers with a casual, "See ya," trying to sound detached even as the twins' affection chases him out the door. The towering Taikanawa building looms ahead, its mirrored windows reflecting the cage he keeps walking back into. He murmurs Kisagawa's name, tension creeping in as memories of that smug junior and his hot girlfriend resurface. He recalls the day Kisagawa flaunted that relationship just like in this morning's dream, the taunting grin now bitterly clear. After an all-nighter, he remembers stumbling home without even contacting Misei, unaware that exhaustion and neglect were pushing her toward betrayal. He remembers bursting into the bedroom to find Kisagawa tangled with his wife while she shrieked that everything was Mitsuhiko's fault. He recalls how from day one, Kisagawa's easy smile disarmed coworkers, leaving him overshadowed. That same pretty face flashes in his memory, weaponized charm that drew women to Kisagawa's side. He pictures Kisagawa's hand resting on his wife's shoulder, realizing that smooth office darling was the one betraying him. He trudges toward work in a stiff suit, replaying how rage kept him from confronting Kisagawa before the editor-in-chief summoned him. Staring down, he wonders what expression a cuckolded husband is supposed to wear in the office that stole his pride. Standing before the massive windowed desk, he listens as the editor-in-chief coolly tells him to leave the Takanawa Books label. He stiffens at the doorway, demanding why he is suddenly being pushed out as dread coils in his gut. Lounging with crossed legs, the editor-in-chief coolly explains there is a rumor he is sleeping around, turning gossip into judgment. His face strains as he stammers in disbelief, unable to fathom why anyone would accuse him of the very sin that destroyed him. Across the wall of books, she urges him to calm down and reminds him he is married while accusing him of an affair with someone's partner. He protests desperately and demands to know who spread such lies as her unreadable gaze weighs his words. His eyes darken as realization crashes in, and he names Kisagawa as the traitor who framed him, hatred thudding like a heartbeat. She meets his glare with flushed irritation, insisting Kisagawa is too honest to lie and silently confirming the office rumors about herself. Alone in a hazy white space, he exhales that it must be time, sensing his breaking point has finally arrived. He forces a gentle smile as he tells her he understands and calmly declares he is quitting the company altogether. She reels at his decision while he turns away, reminding her she was the one who told him to leave in the first place. She shoots up from her chair in panic, saying she only meant the label, but he walks off with a curt farewell and sealed resolve. He storms down the corridor with clenched teeth, cursing under his breath as humiliation and anger finally spill out. The deputy editor-in-chief Uematsu appears with a lazy wave, scolding his shout while greeting him with unexpected warmth. A simple oval of text hangs in the air, inviting him to sit down and talk instead of exploding alone. On the rooftop, Uematsu leans on the rail and says the whole mess explains why everything felt off lately. Uematsu chuckles that he told Junakane a straight arrow like him would never cheat, though she brushed off the old man's opinion. Staring across the railing, he tentatively asks if the deputy editor really believes his innocence. Uematsu answers without hesitation that he can tell just by looking at him, because betrayal simply is not in his nature. A mental snapshot shows him hunched over his desk late at night while Uematsu recalls how he always worked harder than anyone. Kisagawa's carefree pose flashes up as Uematsu insists that, despite rumors, someone that dedicated would never stab the company in the back. Tears well in his eye as he whispers his gratitude, finally feeling seen after being smeared as a villain. In chibi form, Uematsu awkwardly offers to plead his case to upper management, while he reminds him he has already chosen to quit. Uematsu gasps at the seriousness of his resolve as the younger man admits he simply cannot stand being there any longer. Uematsu peers over his glasses with a thoughtful look and calls out to Okeya, hinting at a different path if he is willing. With an inviting smile and outstretched arm, Uematsu asks whether he would join him in creating a brand new label. Okeya stares wide-eyed, stunned that the void of losing everything might be filled with a new beginning. Hands folded, Uematsu explains he plans to leave soon himself and launch a fresh light novel company from scratch. Okeya glances sideways, uneasy yet intrigued that someone would risk starting a label right when his own life is collapsing. Uematsu's eyes narrow with quiet conviction as he says big publishers shackle them from doing what really matters. A phone screen of proposals fills the frame as he admits low-scoring works die unseen here, and he cannot stand watching them disappear. He lists the brutal weekend shifts and dawn commutes with a grimace, calling out how twisted the company's normal has become. He adds that they are supposed to be ordinary employees, not expendable machines, his tired smile hiding simmering rebellion. Akari's unimpressed face flickers in his mind, echoing how she told him any company that steals weekends is broken and should be ditched. He lowers his head and quietly agrees, the weight of his old life slipping as he steps toward the unknown. His hand clasps Uematsu's in a firm shake, throwing his lot in with the risky new label. The apartment complex stands still under the sky while his exhausted sigh drifts up from within. He collapses face first onto the futon, mumbling that he is already asleep as his body finally gives out. Half dreaming, he frowns at the strange softness under his fingers, confusion seeping through the haze. Beside him, Nanako shifts in her sleep, unaware that her peaceful body has become his accidental pillow. His eyes snap open and sweat bursts out as he realizes exactly where his hand has wandered. Still dreaming, she murmurs his title with a blushy smile, nuzzling closer like he belongs to her. She wraps her arms around him and sighs his name, while he stiffens in sheer panic at the intimate embrace. He jerks upright with a startled squeak just as Akari's voice rings out, catching them in a compromising heap. Akari peeks around the doorway, eyes wide as she takes in the scene with unnerving calm. Pressed against Nanako, he stammers Akari's name, terrorizing that she will take this the worst way possible. Akari's wink and thumbs up say she understands, twisting his frantic denial into something naughty in her head. Leaning in the doorway, she waves and cheerfully tells them to take their time, leaving him to stew in mortification. Nanako clamps onto his waist and drags him back, ignoring his plea to wait as she spirals into damage control. Rubbing sleep from her eyes and tugging at a gaping shirt, Nanako grumbles that Akari's noise ruined her nap. Akari jolts and shrieks that Okarin saw everything, gleefully reminding her sister she was sprawled in his bed. Nanako flails with wild eyes and swears it is not what it looked like, her panic only making it worse. He tells her to relax even as her spiraling pupils and burning cheeks scream that nothing feels okay. Akari leans in with a wicked grin and suggests her sister was doing indecent things in Okarin's sheets. He knocks his hand lightly against Akari's head and chides her not to torment her big sister so much. Glancing at the dropped vacuum by his feet, he thanks Nanako for cleaning, realizing her nap followed hard work. Akari sways her hips toward the kitchen and chirps that dinner is done, while pouting a sing-song apology for teasing. Steaming plates and simple dishes line the low table, turning his barren apartment into a real home for once. He tastes a spoonful, and his eyes widen as the flavor hits harder than he dared expect. Staring at Akari's smug chibi grin, he blurts out why the food is unbelievably good. Blushing, she admits she packed every bite with love just for him, letting the word hang heavy between them. He laughs weakly and repeats love, but his uneasy smile tells her he is not ready to take it at face value. Akari's shoulders shake as she snaps that he must think her confession is just another joke. Hand over her heart and chest thrust forward, she declares she trained herself in cooking because she truly aims to be his wife. He forces a crooked smile, half guilty and half defensive, knowing he still sees them as students no matter how they beg otherwise. Akari turns to Nanako with determined eyes, vowing this will be a long battle for his heart and that they must keep pushing. Mouth crammed full, Nanako struggles to answer, too lost in the taste of dinner to match her sister's resolve. Akari sighs that her big sister is hopeless, yet her tiny thank you betrays how much she loves Nanako's oblivious sweetness. Sitting primly on the sofa, the twins face him with uncharacteristic seriousness and bring up the question of his future. He stares ahead and declares flatly that he will divorce his foolish wife, cutting the last thread without flinching. The sisters explode with fists pumping and wild faces, so thrilled by his decision that even he wonders at their intensity. Hunched on the couch with fingers steepled, He explains he will file the paperwork soon and has been trying all day to meet her. Nanako checks her phone and reports that the wife has read every message and still chosen silence. Akari folds her arms with a hard glare, condemning the woman not just as a failed spouse but as a disgrace of a human being. Akari flashes a huge thumbs up, loudly praising his breakup while he sits there taking in her easy approval. He looks aside with a weary half-smile as he calmly suggests dropping alimony, too drained to fight over money. Akari stretches confidently and brags about his big company job, only for his flat "I quit" to slice through her assumption. Both sisters stiffen and pale, their eyes shaking as the security they believe he had suddenly vanishes. In chibi shock, the twins stare blankly across the table, croaking out confused questions about why their sensei would do that. Arms folded, he explains with tired nonchalance that the deputy editor invited him to build a brand new company. His off-screen words about still earning plenty float between them, framing his gamble as less reckless than it sounds. Akari slaps a hand to her chest and declares she will prop up the household as his second child bride, turning desperation into bravado. Nanako clenches her fists and stammers that she will be the first child bride who saves money, cheeks blazing at her own boldness. Akari leans over her sister's shoulder and whispers about doing her best at night, corrupting Nanako's earnest vow into flustered innuendo. He averts his gaze with a strained look, steering the talk away from lewd promises as he says he has something serious to tell them. The twins press close with flushed, misty eyes, asking what he needs and whether they should help, already twisting his seriousness towards something intimate. His eyes darken as he reminds them last night was supposed to be the only sleepover and delivers a hard, unblinking no. Facing their stunned silence, he finally pushes the real question at them, demanding what they meant by having nowhere else to go. Sweat trailing his cheek, he asks if their parents are not worried, clinging to the hope there is some responsible adult in their lives. Akari's gaze drops and her fingers clench as she mutters that that person would never worry about them anyway. Nanako hesitates, then confesses she does not want to return to that house ever again, the words heavy with unspoken hurt. He leans forward tensely and insists that if home is that bad they should go to the police or child services instead of him. Akari's eyes harden as she says those places were useless, none of the adults truly helping them at all. His face tightens as he realizes they already begged for help elsewhere and were turned away before landing on his doorstep. Shots of the sisters flicker by while his inner narration admits those efforts fixed nothing, hinting that the rot in their home runs deep. Akari sits with her back to him and murmurs that their grandparents are already gone, stripping away another safety net. She forces a soft smile as she adds that even their relatives refuse to listen properly, leaving their complaints to die in midair. Nanako stares down and says there is no one left but him, branding her teacher the only adult they can still trust. He stands small beneath the speech bubble condemning his ex, realizing there is no reason he should suffer for yet another selfish woman. Akari's teary, heart-shaped gesture fills his memory as he acknowledges how, despite their own chaos, the twins tried desperately to cheer him up. Their smiling faces loom behind him while he admits he has been wrapped up in his own misery, blind to what they were carrying. His eye sharpens with sudden resolve as he asks himself what he can actually do for these two wounded girls. Off-screen, their knees and skirts visibly tremble, fear and hope shaking through them as they wait on his judgment. Then he tells them they can stay for a while, and their wide, disbelieving eyes shine with stunned relief. Nanako peeks from the side and asks if that is really okay, like she cannot trust good news to last. Standing straight, she reminds him they are minors and that living together will just drain his finances further. He gently pats her head and scoffs that he is nowhere near poor enough to need kids worrying about his wallet. Nanako's eyes overflow as the warmth of that touch finally breaks through her careful restraint. Facing them both, he spreads his arms and promises to cover their living costs, even suggesting a shopping trip for necessities tomorrow. Akari lights up with a radiant blush, hardly believing he will really spend money just to take care of them. Nanako fidgets and insists they are already burdening him too much, while Akari deflates with an exaggerated groan at her sister's guilt. Hands on his hips, he smiles and assures them he does not consider them a bother at all, not even a little. Her cheeks pink, Nanako listens as he tells her she should loosen up and be more carefree like Akari. In chibi form, Akari puckers up and threatens to kiss him for being mean, while he flails in comic horror at yet another looming smooch. Akari throws her arms up and squeals on the couch, while Nanako smiles softly, both drunk on the fantasy of living with Okurin without a care. He watches them with a level gaze and calmly undercuts their excitement by asking what they plan to do about school. Akari forces a wobbly smile and leans back, scrambling for composure as she hides behind the excuse of spring break. Nanako sits up primly and explains their school is only a short train ride away, trying to make the arrangement sound perfectly normal. Her eyes squeeze shut in a too bright smile as she insists they will be fine, masking all the uncertainty underneath. From across the room he asks about tuition, his practical concern cutting through their fragile optimism. Nanako answers that money will not be an issue, but her small stiffness betrays how hard she is bluffing. He exhales and agrees to trust them for now, warning them to speak up if anything goes wrong. Tears glimmer at Nanako's lashes as she thanks him, relief mingling with guilt at how much they are asking. He leans forward with his hands open and insists he still needs their parents' permission, drawing a hard adult line neither girl can dodge. Akari stiffens while Nanako answers understood, their shared unease proving how impossible that request really is. The next morning Akari groggily pushes herself up from the futon, the heavy silence pressing where childish bravado used to be. Rubbing her temple, she yawns a lazy greeting, trying to shake off the weight of yesterday's promises. Beside her, Nanako mutters in her sleep that she loves her teacher, clinging to a dream where everything is simple and safe. In a blurred memory, younger Nanako asks if they should run away from home, desperate for Akari to give permission. Nanako once stood in the doorway and told little Akari she never had to worry, taking on the role of protector far too early. Her sleepy smile had vowed Akari would never be left alone, a childish promise that now chains them both to Okarin's room. A lonely phone screen flashing no new messages mocks Nanako's hope that their so-called new family might ever reach out. Akari leans over her sister on the futon and calls softly, a tremor in her voice as old dependence resurfaces. With tears threatening, she whispers that Nanako's happiness is all that matters and trails off on Okarin's name, choking on her own feelings. Nanako blinks awake in a daze and asks what is wrong, catching only the tail end of that selfless confession. Akari forces a bright grin and brushes it off as nothing, hiding the ache behind her usual playfulness. Nanako nuzzles the warmth of her sister's palm, completely unaware of the sacrifice being rehearsed above her. Blushing and clutching her chest, Akari begs her to be happy and secretly swears she will push Nanako and Okarin together no matter the cost. Okarin slides the door open mid-vow, greeting them casually and unknowingly crashing into Akari's private resolve. Akari jolts up with an overeager good morning, sprinting toward him like nothing heavy was ever said. He teases that she is as hyper as always while she jokes that energy is all she has, turning insecurity into a noisy shield. In chibi form, she drags him toward Nanako and demands a proper morning greeting, shoving her sister into awkward intimacy. Nanako blushes bright and fumbles out a shaky good morning, her nerves laid bare before both of them. Pressed cheek to cheek, Akari warns that beauty alone will not win Okarin, and urges her sister to fight harder for his heart. Nanako shyly tugs at her collar, exposing lacy lingerie as she tries to summon the sex appeal Akari insists he wants. Okarin gently bonks Akari's head and cuts in with a dry "hey now," refusing to let the lesson turn into a peep show. Panicking, Akari blurts an apology that breakfast is not ready yet, acting like a failed housewife instead of a guest. He rests a hand on her head and calmly asks why she is apologizing, reminding her breakfast was never her job. With a soft smile, he tells her she is not a maid but just a kid, granting her a childhood no one else ever bothered to protect. A harsh memory flashes of her mother demanding breakfast because she was the one earning money, turning care into obligation. Young Akari remembers being told all her nutrients went to her chest while being mocked as a dumb girl who did not even get that, cruelty etched into her blank stare. Back on the futon, Nanako studies her sister's gloomy silence and gently asks what is wrong. Akari flails in the doorway, insisting it is nothing, while Nanako watches with quiet worry and Okarin waits just outside. She suddenly dashes for the kitchen, shouting that she will cook after all and apologizing, desperate to drown painful memories in forced usefulness. Akari's eyes widen in startled confusion as his gentle accusation that she is too considerate slips past her defenses. He smiles softly and reminds them they are still just kids, stripping away the adult role she clings to. Blushing and small, she listens as he thanks her cooking yet firmly tells her she does not have to shoulder that burden. Her fist tightens against her chest as his plea to rely on adults shakes the armor she built to survive. In chibi form, she stammers agreement while the other two cheerfully rope her into breakfast outside, leaving her no room to refuse. A quiet, stylish cafe stretches around them, its peaceful emptiness mocking the turmoil tangled between the three. He and Nanako trade warm praise about the cozy spot, building an easy intimacy that leaves Akari as the outsider. Nanako turns with a gentle smile and asks if this soothing place is Akari's style too, unknowingly pressing on her insecurity. Akari's face splits between dizzy panic and forced laughter as she agrees, overwhelmed by jealousy and joy. From across the booth she silently screams why she ended up next to him, trapped in the very seat she wanted for her sister. She sneaks a sideways glance, berating herself because this is where her big sister should be flirting against his shoulder instead. Nanako's shy, radiant smile hits her like a spotlight, blinding her with guilt for wanting that glow all to herself. He gives a soft chuckle and says the scene brings back memories, nostalgia smoothing over the tension. Akari tilts her head with a wary look, unsure whether those memories make her feel cherished or left behind. Nanako nods as he recalls their cram school days, their tiny forms mirroring the same positions around him now. A flashback shows Chibi Akari buzzing around Nanako, yet going silent beside her beloved teacher, exposing a crush she never dared voice. He leans in and mentions the cream soda she used to love here, proving he watched her more closely than she believed. Her heart practically bursts out of her chest as that remembered detail turns her old feelings painfully real again. His phone buzzes at his hip and he mutters an apology, the sudden intrusion slicing through the fragile mood. Akari's eyes narrow on the name Rusha-sensei, suspicion already knotting in her chest. She jerks upright with a sharp stare, the unfamiliar woman's name igniting dread that a rival has appeared. Sitting stiffly while he talks, she reminds herself he is single now and of course other women will notice how good he is. Her gaze drops as she admits there will be plenty of competition, the thought of losing him tightening her throat. Across the table, Nanako hums about the nice weather while Akari's inner vow to pair her sister with Okaran hardens. In chibi form, the twins gush over the great breakfast and upcoming shopping, while he slips away to the restroom. Nanako notices Akari's mood dip and gently asks what is wrong, her calm eyes inviting honesty. Kneeling close, she studies her sister's bowed head and quietly presses again, worried by the uncharacteristic silence. Akari finally confesses she only wants Nanako to be happy, hinting that her own desires will be sacrificed. Nanako's eyes shine as she says they should simply be happy together, offering shared joy instead of martyrdom. Clasping Akari's hands, Nanako admits she never wanted to smile alone, and dreams of the three of them living warmly side by side. A memory of younger Nanako offering pudding while chirping her love resurfaces, proving how long Akari has been treasured. Tears blur Akari's vision as she forces a smile, desperately agreeing that this version of happiness must be enough. Then she plants her hands on her hips and boldly declares they just have to make Okaran marry both of them. Nanako explodes in crimson outrage, stumbling over the word marry as the impossible fantasy slams into her. Akari's imagination runs wild, picturing herself draped over Nanako in a brazen sister combo that leaves Nanako sputtering in horror. Trying to ground the madness, Nanako argues that if they attack together Okaran will eventually cave, half hopeful and half afraid. Akari blushes and insists she knows he would never stoop to something gross, her faith in his kindness battling her own schemes. Bounding up with renewed bravado, she proclaims they must unleash twin heart-melting assaults until he falls, even as Nanako whines she cannot. Akari looms in her face with fiery encouragement, chanting that where there is will there is a way while Nanako wilts under the pressure. Okaran returns with a weary sweat drop, chiding them not to disturb the other customers as he walks into the middle of their reckless plotting. Akari beams up at him with drunken warmth, blurting a syrupy love you that crushes the air between play and confession. Nanako jerks forward with a furious blush, scolding her sister for pushing their teacher too far, even as jealousy pricks her voice. Akari melts against Nanako's chest with a tipsy grin, showering her big sister with love while his unseen presence makes the affection sting. Between them, he puffs his cheek and grumbles he will not be fooled, while Nanako sighs geese at how easily Akari's sweetness warps the mood. His pocket buzzes in the dark, Rushia-sensei's name lighting the screen and pricking a fresh thread of unease. He stares at the phone with a tight frown, tapping the screen as dread whispers that something is off. His eye dilates in a stunned close-up, the tiny bead of sweat betraying a shock that rocks him silent. The twins tilt their heads and call out to him, their chibi faces blank with worry at the way he suddenly freezes. On the glowing screen, his estranged wife's desperate texts about divorce and starting over turn into an ominous summons that threatens to unravel everything.